Hey guys, it's a rainy day down here and we are onto the final wheel of repacking the bearings and installing the brake drums. And I wanted to show you guys how to do it. I got the brake drum here. If you watched my brakes video, you saw how to get these off. But today we're going to replace the wheel seal, install new bearings. I'm going to show you how to pack the bearings and how to measure up the brake drum and get it installed back on the coach. So luckily we got dry weather in here, or it's dry in here, and I'm going to show you everything you need to know. So the rain is really coming down, but what you want to do is take a large flat tip screwdriver and a hammer. I got a bronze hammer here, and this wheel seal right here, you can see the lip of it, this metal. You got to collapse it in on itself to get it out. So I'm going to show you now. You line up the hammer good and take care not to actually hammer away or chip the brake drum material itself here. So your hammer placement is pretty important. Just one hit in and you can go from there. Work your way around. And this one, I just went right through it. Now I can pry it up and out. Just like that. These are going to get completely destroyed to get removed, so don't worry how ugly it looks. You just can't chip away at the brake drum itself. There you go. There we go. Almost out of there. Woo! So now with that out, here's our old bearing. You want to place this bearing on a clean work surface if you plan on reusing it and just repacking it. So I got a rag here. Just put that over there. And now we can start removing the races. I have a bronze drift here, brass drift, I can't remember what it is. And don't worry about the grease inside, but you want to get this on the lip of the cup of your outer wheel bearing, and then just pound it on out and work it around, like do a little one side at a time a little bit. The lip's really small, so it might slip off really easily. You're supposed to use a bronze or brass drift for this because it's a soft metal that won't damage the brake drum. There we go. You might have heard the tone change right there, but as it gets looser, the tone will become less metallic. So now we'll flip it over and do the inner wheel bearing cup. And I'll take this and put it with the bearing. Again, if you plan on reusing it, don't let it get dirty. The grease captures the dirt and just holds onto it, and it's really hard to get it off. Might have broke it loose there. We're gonna flip it over and check. Nope, hasn't budged. You just gotta get it up on that lip, and it's hard to do, especially with the grease, lubing everything up, but you wanna make sure you use this tool. It's worth it. These brake drums, you can't buy them new anymore, so everything you can to preserve the original parts, I would recommend. There we go, I heard it change. And it's right at the bottom now, and it came right out. What you're hammering on here, and you can see it a little bit, the brass flaked off. Right here on this lip is what the drift is actually resting on to beat it out. So now with all the dirty work done, I'm just cleaning out the grease from inside with some shop rags. Once I get all the grease wiped out pretty good, I'm going to use some brake cleaner to finish it off. Now I get the other side. I wonder how old this grease is. Definitely old. So like I said, the brake drums, you can't buy them new anymore. They have to re-drill 5-lug brake drums to 8-lug. So I am not going to get mine turned. There's no reason to. They're not that bad condition. There's no grooves. I'm just going to sand them down with 80 grit, and I'm going to do this before I do the final cleaning for the bearings, because this is going to make metallic dust and everything. So I just sand them like this, go all around a bunch. Well, it stopped raining and we got it all sanded down. We're gonna take a wire brush here. I got this little set from Harbor Freight for a couple bucks, and just dump all the material out of it and start cleaning the inside with brake cleaner. So I like to spray it in, kind of let it pool up in the bottom. And after you let it cool up, you can start scrubbing it down with the wire brush. These cans, when they get to the bottom, what you want to do is hold it perfectly upright. Just a little tip here. You hold it perfectly upright and then angle the straw to where you're going, and it will make it go all the way to the end of the can. Spray a little bit inside. I just like to scrub it down in here because I like to do a good job. That's really all there is to it. All right, so this is the part number for the cup on the inside here. It's LM501310. So what you want to do is take this out, get your hands, make sure they're clean, and find a bearing race that fits the right size on it. And then line it up. And you want to make sure it's perfectly straight. And then, using your hammer, once it's perfectly straight in there, I like to get it started just like that. Then you can place your tool and drive it on home. You'll hear the tone change as it goes farther in, and then it will hit that little ridge that will stop it, and the tone will change completely. Now we can tell it's perfectly in there, the tone changed. And we'll do the same for this other one. So the other cup I'm using is a 15243. This is the outer bearing cup. That's Timken 15243. You got the tool right here. Again, make sure you start straight, and I would suggest probably double checking as you go to make sure that it's going in straight. So this one's ready. When you got everything aligned pretty straight, it should just fall into place pretty easily. And this one's actually a little bit too big. Mike, can you get me the smaller size than this? All right, we got the right size. We'll just drive it on in now. And listen for that tone to change. It's much more metallic of a sound. And that's all the way in there. So now we're going to pack the bearings, or if you haven't replaced this part, you're going to repack your bearings. Now I'm using this synthetic grease from Redline Oil, but it's not compatible with other types of grease, so I would not recommend it for a repack job. But what you want to do is scoop out some of this, about that much, and then get your bearing out of its container. Taking care to never set it on the ground like sturdy or anything like that. And what you want to do is take just a little bit of grease and work it up in there. So you come into the grease and pull back and push down simultaneously, and you'll start to see that grease come up through the top. Here it comes. You want to be careful not to get too much grease all over this bearing, because you'll never know if you packed it completely and the grease made it all the way. So just scoop and push, and it actually hydraulically pushes up and into the bearing. Here it comes. So I got a Chicago Rawhide 21771 wheel seal. You can do this with the bearing driver or with just the hammer real carefully. What I'll do is get it started. It's a real pain to do it this way. So once you kind of get it started, I recommend getting the driver. This one's nice because it interchanges like that. And again, the most important thing here is just to make sure it goes on straight. And you want to drive it down till it's flush. There you go, tone changed. I like to go around and cover it a little bit on each part. So now we are good. I'm going to take this and rub the grease on the rubber of the seal and place this cover over it, so when I flip it over, no dirt gets inside there. Dirt wears out the bearings. You don't want that. So now we'll flip it. And we'll pack the other bearing. I'm using a 15103 Timken bearing for this part. We'll get this prepped, scoop out more grease. And then grab it on out of here. So again, you pack it from the underside till you see it come out the top. These ones are a little bit easier to pack. You can see what's going on a little better. Here it comes. It's important to do this by hand because you want to make sure you have a perfect pack job and that there's no air bubbles. So there you go. See how it's coming out the top right there? 1, 2, 3, 4. You want that. You want to see that all the way around. If you're repacking your bearings, what comes out the top will be dirty old grease because you're putting in fresh new grease. So you'll wipe that dirty old grease off. But for what I'm doing now, we just want to see the clean grease go all the way through the bearing and out the top. Almost done. That looks pretty good. Just gonna cover it all up. What you want to do on the inside of this is pack it full of grease as well. You want to just scoop out a bunch of the grease. And it's going to make a huge mess, but just fill the cavity full of grease. Anything you got left over, anything you can scrunch up in here. With it all packed in, you can put the bearing on. And you're ready to go. I'm gonna wipe my hands clean, and at the same time, I'm gonna kind of clean up the mess I made here on the top. Another thing you want to clean out is your inner cap, because we're gonna pack this full of clean grease as well. So I just scoop, see how nasty that is? Scoop all that out. And I'm gonna spray it out, but I'm not gonna do it over the grease. I'm gonna do it off camera here. You don't wanna get brake cleaner on the freshly packed grease. You'll thin it out. You don't want that. So I'm gonna put this on here without any grease just yet, just to keep that bearing safe, because we don't want the bearing to fall out potentially onto the dirty ground. So just tap that on. It's not all the way, but just enough to keep it good. And wipe all this excess off. And then we're gonna go ahead and reinstall it. So this tool right here makes it a really easy job to put the drum back on. You take the tool, measure the diameter of the brake drum, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to be pretty close. This one's pretty good. You can kind of balance it in the middle even and adjust it out. That's pretty good. And then match that diameter up on the other side to your brake drum. So I like to go right across the axle here and then make sure this is in spec. The spec's about 20 thousandths. So this one's really close, but I'm gonna tighten it up a little bit with the self-adjuster here. Before you install the brake drum, make sure your pins are all aligned, the tabs are good, your springs are all set, your self-adjuster is working. Check everything before you put the brake drum back on. So make sure your brake shoes are centered and they're not in the little trough around the edge. And you can lift up your brake drum and put it on. It is heavy. You want to get it on most of the way, and then the nut will tighten everything down and fully seat. So now with it safely in place, we'll take off the cap. And we have the bearing here. Push the bearing on. And then you have your washer. We already cleaned this up. I'm going to give it a little final wipe down though. The washer goes with the slot on. And you can see the wear pattern here. This was where the nut, and this was on the bearing. We'll just keep it the same. That goes in. And then we have our nut already cleaned up. Put that on. And then it's an 1.25" socket. So have your helper spin the brake drum counterclockwise, and we're going to torque it down to 25 foot-pounds just to get everything fully seated. But you spin it the opposite way that you're tightening it. What we're doing right now is fully seating the bearings and the brake drum on the axle. You might feel it get a little tighter as you spin it up and get everything seated. All right, so keep spinning, Mike. We're almost at 25. All right, so now everything's fully seated, so we can back the nut off and then grab the socket by hand. Now when you do this, you just want to get finger tight, hand tight. If you can't match up the cotter pin, then what you do is you actually go a little bit looser. So take your cotter pin and take a pair of needle nose pliers and put a small, about 25 or 30 degree bend on the cotter pin, kind of like that. That'll help you get it into the slot, kind of like this. And this part can be tricky because the grease covers up the hole and it's hard to see. But never go tighter than finger tight. Always go a little bit looser. If you keep it too tight, or if you don't back off from 25 foot-pounds, you're gonna end up losing a wheel and watching it go past you. And that's from the bearing getting too hot and basically melting and falling off. So I feel it here. I got it started. I'm gonna get it just a little bit tighter, just a tiny little bit. There we go. Now we should be able to get this on here. All right, so I got it lined up. Now we just push it through, just like that. And that bend you put in there, you're gonna kind of straighten it out as you push it through. There we go, push it all the way. Take one tab and bend it over. And then the other tab, you can cut it off with just a little bit left, and you'll bend that down. There we go. So now what you can do is wipe off any excess grease with a clean rag. So now take a big goop of grease, and we're gonna pack this cap full. And we're gonna install it. So we got that full. We got this, and then a hammer. There you go. The final wipe now, the grease will get flung out by centrifugal force, and you probably don't want that getting all over your wheels. So wipe it down really good. Wipe down your lug nuts. Any other grease that's still on there. And then you can take your outer cover and you can get that on there. Sometimes they go on by hand. And you're all done. So we're gonna clean up now. As you can see, doing bearings is easy as pie. We're gonna put the wheel back on and lower this thing down, and we got a couple more small projects before the maiden voyage for the first test drive, but you're supposed to pack your bearings about every 20,000 miles, maybe even more often if you really want to preserve the life of your bearings. It's a cheap job. The new wheel seals are a couple bucks each, and you replace those each time. And then when you're repacking them, you can use less grease than from brand new like we just did. But I would say count on using about one tub per side. So about 14 ounces per side. 28 ounces total in this case is what I used. And we got all 4 of them done. So just clean up, be safe, have fun. We got more videos coming for you. We're gonna have a video coming up soon on the Onan generator and the ultimate guide to the Onan generator and how to get yours running perfectly. Stay tuned.